Hi everyone, this is Julianne Victoria of Through the Peacock's Eyes. Welcome to my channel. Mini-Me is also here having her snack. She is joining us. She may add in some commentary as she has been lately. So this video, I'm going to talk about the sword suit in the tarot. Specifically, this is a response or a VR to a couple of hashtags or inspired by them. The first one by Natalia over at Ouroboros channel. I'll link the channels below. And she just did a hashtag called heartbreak, and it's about, I think she titled it Misunderstood Three of Swords. And that reminded me of another hashtag Swords So Negative by Natalie over at Sanskrit Blue, which she started that like a year and a half ago, and it's been on my list, my ever-growing list of things to talk about. So I thought I would combine the two because they're very much related. Now, Natalia over at Ouroboros talked about how she sees Three of Swords very much as a mental thing, because swords represent the mind, the intellect, the psyche. You can even say psychology, even though it's not an emotional suit. But the Three of Swords is very much about what's going on in the mind, and not so much about, you know, like often it's called the card of like third party or a threesome and someone else, something external, or someone external doing something to cause the pain. And I agree a lot with that. Of course, in different readings, you know, cards can bring in different messages and meaning. But overall, swords represent air, and air represents the mind and the intellect and our thoughts, even the ego. And swords is also the suit of strife. It's called that. I forget. I've read it in many places over the years. It's called the suit of strife. And if you look at the swords, like especially in an RWS or a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you know, they're not pretty. And I didn't bring one out because most people know it, and a lot of people are probably going to reference that deck for this hashtag. Yeah, it's not. Swords isn't the most pleasant suit of the deck or the cards to get in a reading, especially things like the Three of Swords and the Ten of Swords. So I pulled out a few Three of Swords and the whole sword suit from a few decks here to talk about. And the way I see Three of Swords and how it most often, not always of course because every reading is different, but how it most often comes up for me is it represents deep healing that is taking place within someone or is going to be taking place. It can be triggered or opened up or cracked open by an external experience, by an actual heartbreak, but it represents something deep inside the individual that needs to crack open, that needs to come to their awareness so they can heal and grow from deep within. And often it's about, because it's swords, a change of mindset, a shift in beliefs, a wake-up call to reality. And often, you know, that healing is dark and painful and gut-wrenching, because it often opens up some things about ourselves we don't want to acknowledge and realize in our awake conscious state, so meaning shadow aspects. But for me, it's very much a deep healing card, which, yeah, you can see deep healing, which can be dark and painful as negative, but it's through that process, through, you could say, the dark night of the soul type of archetypal energy, that's great growth and great transformation occurs. So a few Three of Swords I pulled out here that I thought I'd want to share for this. The first one is from the Light Seers Tarot, and this is the Three of Swords. Now, the reason I like this Three of Swords so much is because it's hard to tell if this person is crying or they're laughing. And sometimes when we're given that sort of slap in the face or wake-up call to reality that shakes us up, that maybe rips a hole in our heart. Okay, as I was saying, so we might have an experience that tears open our heart, that reveals to us maybe something we were attached to that we shouldn't have been attached to, whatever it might be. But it's through that painful revelation, and often grieving away what was or what we thought, right? Swords, what we thought was, what we wanted so much for something to be, or wanted so much to feel something, when we realize it isn't or wasn't what we thought it was or wanted it to be. You know, sometimes we laugh. We laugh in the absurdity of it all, or at the absurdity of it all. And sometimes laughing is a form of release that brings great healing. So that's why I love this Three of Swords. It looks painful, but it also looks like relief. There's a lot of work to do once we laugh at the absurdity, but there's a feeling of relief as well. Now, another Three of Swords. Okay, my favorite Three of Swords ever is from the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. And it's this one. Because this does represent the, at least to me, right? The feeling of healing. Let me get the glare off. The feeling of healing. You know, when she's holding the roses, which have thorns, and her hand is bleeding from holding the roses. I feel this shows the healing that comes after the heartbreak, that comes after the shock, that comes after, you know, if this deep healing was triggered by an external thing, after that is accepted. Maybe not after, maybe during the grieving process. The sense of peace and serenity that comes from understanding that it's part of the healing and spiritual growth journey. Okay, so another Three of Swords, and this one is from the Hush Tarot that I really love, is this card. So the girl here is looking over her shoulder. I feel like she's looking over her shoulder at what she realizes she needs to leave behind. What expectations, what experiences, maybe someone or something in her external life, she knows she needs to leave it behind. And she knows that it's not going to be an easy journey because she needs to do self-evaluation, to understand the pain she may be feeling, maybe literally heartbreak. She needs to grieve what she is running away from, which she at one point probably held on to mentally. So then I was thinking, okay, I think that's what I think Three of Swords is about, or swords in general. I'll get more into the swords here. So then I pulled out my deck, the Scrying Poetry Tarot, and I'm like, what did I write? What did I know? What did I write on my Three of Swords? And I wrote, old wounds, grief, and loss, heal in kind. Which is, it's the inner process. It's the inner process, healing deep within. So let's talk about swords in general. Yeah, swords, they can come across as a very negative suit. Not that we should ignore the negative, you know, it's two sides of duality. There's the positive and the negative, and sometimes we have to experience what we think of as something negative in order to experience the opposite, the more positive, or to appreciate that in our lives. But again, swords is a suit of thoughts. It's the mind, it's the intellect. And so by embracing the suit of swords and those cards that come up, it can be scary if you're like getting the Ten of Swords often in a reading. But the Ten of Swords, for example, I see as us choosing to remove something mental from our lives that opens the way for something new. Okay, so let's look at some of the swords in the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. Let's look at some of the most negative or unpleasant ones. So let's start with the Five of Swords. To me, Five of Swords is about surrendering thoughts and ideas. And you could see this as, oh, you're going to be attacked by birds or someone in your everyday life. Or you can see it as, oh, those are your thoughts that are haunting your mind, that are causing you stress and anxiety and worry. And there's a need to work with that and understand it and surrender those thoughts. Let's see. This one has an interesting Seven of Swords, which is often thought of as a card as theft and deception, which it can be, obviously. But this one is, you know, he's looking up at the stars, shifting our perspective and seeing what maybe we don't normally see in our busy everyday lives. So seeing within our minds, seeing Could be literally in the stars. So that Seven of Swords is another really tricky card a lot of people struggle with, because yeah, it could mean someone's stealing something from you. But as swords, as the mind, it's like, are we stealing something from ourselves? Are we not seeing something that is right in front of us because our own thoughts are blocking it? I just love the stare on the Eight of Swords here. So Eight of Swords, card of mental interference. Is your view blocked by yourself, by your own thoughts? Nine of Swords, often a card of stress, sometimes illness, anxiety, worry, lack of sleep. And a very different take in this card. But you can see her as, with all those feathers around her, needing to get outside of that sort of halo of worry. The Owl of Wisdom is there, but it's outside her view because her mind is so focused on what's stressing her out instead of seeing beyond it and what else is there that may help that stress. And then, of course, 10 of Swords. This one's not the guy lying on the ground with 10 swords in his back. To me, it's very empowering. It's like, all right, I need to cut this out. Sort of my interpretation of often the 10 of Swords is like the individual, whoever's getting the reading, needs to cut something out. And sometimes that involves a little bit of a bruised ego. That's the 10 swords in the back. Yeah, acknowledging part of our ego that needs to be humbled a bit so that we can charge forth and say, all right, I'm going to do this. It's hard, it's challenging, it's painful, but I want things to change. I want that dawn on the horizon. Let's look at the light seers. So we did 3, 4, 5 of Swords. Our own thoughts giving us a headache. In the Thoth system, it's called defeat, but I see it more as surrender, but you could see it as defeating our thoughts as well, our thoughts that block. This 7 of Swords kind of has that feeling of someone sneaking away with something and deception. I also see this card as strategy. Do we need to shift our thinking, our perspective, our plan, so that we can get what we want, not in a theft sort of way, but in our lives? Can we shift that so we can think, it's hard to explain this, think our way, strategize our way to what we really want in life or in this situation, rather than feeling like maybe someone's taking it from us because we haven't done it ourselves. So many interpretations. I'm just giving quick examples. 8 of Swords. I love that this is a mirror. She's not really tied up and trapped. It's all in her mind. 9 of Swords. More typical. And 10 of Swords. This shows the freedom, the way her hair is flowing, her skirt's flowing, the freedom that comes when we let our egos get a little bit bruised. When we consciously choose and realize, I need to shift my thinking, I need to change my attitude, or I have a belief that's stabbing myself in the back. Yeah, so swords, they do show those challenging sides, those challenging aspects. They do show, what are things that are considered to the average ego identity as negative or not good, and things we don't want. Not that we should want negative things to happen, but when so-called negative things happen, when, let's say, a 3 of Swords heartbreak moment happens in our lives, there's more to it than just the negative. It's painful. Deep healing, we need to do a lot of inner work, understanding, and if it was, broken open by something external, understanding that and our role in that. But when we embrace, in a sense, the negative things that happen, not like, woohoo, something bad happened, but like, okay, it's in a sense like a wake-up call. whether or not, someone or something external did something horrible, that's another aspect here, but I'm talking about the mental side of it all. We embrace that and we work on ourselves and do our part in whatever that experience is or was. Then again, it opens things up. It opens up great growth, great healing, great development as an individual and a soul being. So I'm going to read through my swords from the Scrying Poetry Tarot because I want to see how this concludes all of this. So it's a poetry tarot, and the minor arcana, it's freeform, but the whole pips, the ace through 10, strings together into one poem. So let's read through. A seed of ideas bursts forth in the mind. Silently sit, let intuition rise. Old wounds, grief, and loss heal in kind. Rest and release are dear friends of the wise. Surrendering cling to thoughts opens the eyes, moving away from turbulence and dark times. In plain sight is the truth, now strategize, lest we blind ourselves, bound by our own lies. Lost in the worry, afraid to realize that it's up to us to free our own lives. So I feel like that sums up how I feel about the Suit of Swords. Negative, but not so negative. All right. I hope you found this interesting. I hope it made sense and was insightful in some way. If you want to join in the hashtags, the originals are linked down below. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, joining in, and I'll see you back here soon.